All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to my channel, The Political Refugee. Again, one of my favorite special guests. I don't know, it's neck and neck between her and Reed Coverdale and my buddy Charles in South Carolina. They're all great. They all have different perspectives, but I want to welcome back Stacie Haneline, who is a dedicated libertarian. I'm a soon-to-be libertarian. Today, we're going to talk about a very important issue, which I think is somewhat misunderstood, both by libertarians and by non-libertarians. So how's it going today, Stacie?
Very well, David. Thank you so much for having me on the show again. And welcome to the Libertarian Party.
Yeah. I'm waiting for my voter registration card to come back. I'm not sure those Florida Republicans are going to allow this, but we're going to see what happens. I'm in a very red zone. I'd like to turn it more gold or purple or whatever the color the libertarians represent technically, just to say that I'd like to see some more diversity of thought in pretty much all precincts around this country. And I think people need to start opening their minds to this nonsense of the left-right paradigm and to move toward it's us and then it's the ruling class. I don't know if you agree or disagree with that, but that's kind of how I see this shaking down as time goes on.
Yes, I absolutely agree with that. And it is gold. Vote gold.
Gold. All right. We'll turn this district gold, which sounds pretty appealing. I want to today really focus on this one issue. And you tweeted out about this or at least sent me a private message regarding what's been happening with these giant tech companies and pretty much across the board. This past week, we saw how Wall Street was in bed with itself and basically decided to exclude us little people from their portfolios, and these large hedge funds decided to say, you know what? This is our game. This is the way we play it. You guys really aren't invited. We understand now that you are kind of, you're on to us. That's kind of what I got the message was this week is we're on to you. We see you and we can do what you guys do. But as George Carlin said, it's a big club and you guys ain't in it. So I found that to be remarkable that then the government, through the Biden administration, putting out basic little memes about this saying that, we've got to have tighter controls on this. Nancy Pelosi, she's going to dig in and get to the bottom of what happened with this GameStop issue. I think you and I were talking about a separate issue revolving around another company that's basically part owned by the government, more or less, or there's government collusion. Companies like Twitter, Facebook, there may be a few others in the tech industry and how they're kind of keeping speech in it's like a hedge fund for speech, So give us some of your perspective on this. I know you come at this from a constitutional area and also from a legal mind that you have practicing law and so forth over the years. Couple of bullet points about the collusion stuff where a lot of people, some libertarians, their knee-jerk reaction is, well, it's a private company and you got to let them be. And then when you dig in, you find out it's in the pure sense, it's not a private company.
It's a private company, bro. That's the they just repeat that over and over again.
Yeah.
So before I get started on the constitutional analysis, first I want to say I'm still trying to understand this whole GameStop thing and what happened. Mm-hmm. And I'm not an expert on that, but the Convo Couch, Pasta and Fee just released a really good video, which I was in the middle of watching when you invited me to do this conversation. So I am going to go back to that conversation with Pasta and Fee and try to understand that better. And I recommend that, everybody does.
Okay.
But this whole, it's a private company, bro, when we're talking about Twitter or Facebook, Google, Amazon, etc. Yes, that is correct. They are private companies. But guess what else? They can be private companies and government actors.
Yeah.
And I will explain exactly why. So if you look at the 14th Amendment of the United States Constitution, it says, second sentence, no state shall. And then it goes into the privileges or immunities clause, and then the due process clause, and then the equal protection clause. So the 14th Amendment is saying no state shall, and then there's a list of things that no state shall do. Well, state equals government. State equals government. No government shall.
Right.
And so free speech is a fundamental right. Under both the due process clause and the equal protection clause.
Right.
And the 14th Amendment was the amendment that incorporated the Bill of Rights, which were the first through the 10th amendments.
Yeah.
And so that the federal government, so that the state governments were included. So this is probably superfluous information, but the important thing to know is that where it says no state shall, that means no government shall. And through the, through both the due process clause and the equal protection clause, which say that the First Amendment is a fundamental right, and it's one of those things that no state shall take away. No government shall take away. Now, a government actor, in order for a private company to be considered a government actor, there must be a nexus, like a connection between that private company and government, or a symbiotic relationship, meaning that, the government gives the company certain things and then the company gives government certain things. And so they're both benefiting, right?
Yeah.
So if there's so much evidence out there of the government working together with these big tech companies. And so while most of us are going like, it's a private company, bro. No, it's a government actor. Like that's where we are right now. So let's step it up a little bit. Let's let people understand what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
A private company can also be a government actor under the Constitution of the United States. Now, this is important. The reason why I think that this is super important is because our former president was impeached for speech.
Correct.
And so my husband, who's also a lawyer, says, high crimes don't have to be crimes. Just look at the Federalist Papers. I'm not going to look at the Federalist Papers. High crimes are crimes. So really, a president should only be able to be impeached for a crime.
Correct.
And so now you look at speech. The Constitution of the United States says that you cannot be arrested for speech. There are, however, 5 categories of unprotected speech, which are exceptions to the First Amendment. Yep. And when I was talking to Dan Behrman, Dan Taxation is Theft Behrman, one of my favorite libertarians.
I just followed him. Yeah.
Yeah. He was like, well, name those 5 exceptions. And I was like, oh, I'm not good at memorizing things. Yeah. So I'm going to name them now. Okay. Right. Inciting imminent lawless action is number 1. That is this whole incitement. Oh, Trump was guilty of incitement. Yeah. I'll get back to that. But first, I'm going to list the other ones. Fighting words, obscenity, defamation, and some types of commercial speech. So I'm not going to go into the 2nd through the 5th, but inciting imminent lawless action there's actually a US Supreme Court case that covers what that means. And it's called Brandenburg v. Ohio. And you don't have to be a white supremacist to say, you know, yeah, the holding of Brandenburg v. Ohio is correct. Because so here are kind of the facts of the case.
Mm-hmm.
There was this group of KKK members who invited the press to come and listen to them. I don't know what they were doing, like chanting around the fire. I don't know. And they were saying racist things like bring back white rights and, you know, other racist things. Yeah. Well, so that's not illegal, basically. Okay. That was the holding of the case, was that it did not meet the standard of incitement of imminent lawless action. And imminent means like something that's going to occur very soon in the future.
Okay.
So if you can, like, and when I say you, I'm not just talking to you because I know that you can understand, but if listeners, if you guys can wrap your heads around this very important thing, then we'll be getting somewhere. Mm-hmm. If you punish your opponents for a certain type of speech, then that's going to set a constitutional precedent. And then when you want to give your own opposing speech, and you've already criminalized that same type of speech from your opponents, then guess what? You criminalized what they did. Now you've set that precedent and your speech will be criminalized too. That's how the Constitution works. Like what's wrong for one group is going to be wrong for another group. And we don't want speech to be silenced. We don't want that.
Right.
And I had another point, but I forgot what it was. So do you want to jump in? Yeah. It'll come to me.
Yeah. While I blab, you can, your brain will work on that. I think what's really interesting, what a lot of people don't see right away, or they should see, those are the, hey man, it's a private company, bro thing, is I suspect that they have some, I want to say leftist tendencies, but they seem to want to defend the status quo rather than kind of digging into it and thinking it doesn't take that long to think outside of this box, to be honest with you. I sent out a tweet that said that Facebook and Twitter aren't private companies. They're co-managed by the federal government. It's really that simple. When Mark Zuckerberg coordinates his company with the Biden for president campaign, we heard a lot about collusion in all the time Trump was in office. He colluded with Russia. Then he had that phone call with the Ukraine folks, and then then he masterminded an insurrection by saying to now go and be peaceful. Those are kind of like his last words: "Go in peace" or something like that, or "Let's walk to the Capitol" or something. And all of it is crazy because, to me, when I try to wrap my mind around the narratives that have come out of all of these events, I start to think to myself, what reality are some people living in? Because I walk down the street and I go, I know I'm not living in this same person over here. I know I'm not in their reality. Whether it's that they're not really plugged into anything, which sometimes, what is that expression? Ignorance can be bliss, because, you don't want to know. You don't want to know what's happening. But then there are a lot of supposed smart people on various social media platforms that think they know. They think they know. Well, you can't really do much about Twitter. Facebook, they're a company, they're a prosperous company. And there is this sense that because Facebook has been around since the mid 2000s to about 2006 or something like that. I don't know exactly when it began. And then a lot of people built their their life around it. I'm going to take the kids to soccer practice and we're going to post it on Facebook. All of a sudden, Facebook almost becomes like a utility because people don't have landlines, right? They got the cell phone. Hey, if I want to post something, get the word out. That's what Trump was doing on Twitter because everybody shut him down. So he's like, oh, I'll tweet on Twitter. And people, I wish he'd stop tweeting. So in other words, you wish he didn't have any access to any communications whatsoever because the media is not covering the guy, or if they are, it's like that Donald Trump, he's evil. And by the way, this isn't a defense of Trump because somebody that I like in the future, whether it's Tulsi Gabbard, look what happened to her AdSense account the night where she absolutely wiped the floor with everybody at that debate. And then a private company basically started colluding with the political folks that they like. This message is dangerous. She's hitting a nerve. She's talking about the deep state. She's talking about what we did in Syria. She's talking about all of these hot button issues. She just called, the former first lady, the queen of warmongers. Oh no. So it's in real time watching this, and you think to yourself, the first thing that comes to mind, and I know you present really good constitutional legal information, but the first thing that occurs to me is they're all in bed together. They're all in bed together. I mean, it's as clear as day. And there should be investigations that are launched with our Justice Department, with State Attorney General, with whoever, who go out there and say, look, we need to investigate, why did Twitter behave this way? Why does Amazon.com not pay any taxes? This is just boom, right there, mic drop. So what's your perspective on, just from sort of an observational, like, I'm just Joe, I don't know anything about the law. I know a little bit about the Constitution. I know free speech, and I know, the Second Amendment, like I should own a firearm, or I have the right to. And then Fourth Amendment, please leave me alone. Don't surveil me every time. 10th Amendment, one of my favorites, where the power supposedly goes back to the states and then back to the people, because that's what it says. Sorry, I'm getting a little glare here from the Florida sun coming through, and it's kind of messing me up. But
I'm so jealous.
76 degrees today. Sorry, I just throw it in there. I have to fix the blinds. So go ahead. You talk. I will be back. So go ahead.
Okay. So it's hard for me to talk without a person, but hello, viewers.
Remember, I left, or you left?
What?
I kept stalling, and I didn't really do
Yes, I know, but I mean, like,
coming through.
I've started my own channel, and I still, and I would love to have you on the show sometime soon.
Anytime.
Thank you so much. But I wanted to do this on your show because I don't have the audience, and this was really something important that I wanted people to hear.
Right.
So thank you for allowing me to come onto your show.
Sorry, I have to drink my vodka. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh yeah, Vlad's vodka. Drink it on down. So Tulsi, definitely, she's been censored from day one. Anyone who's anti-war gets censored. The person who drew me into the Libertarian Party is Jacob Hornberger. Who actually, that was the candidate who was in the lead and up until, right before their convention. He drew me in because he spoke out for Assange, and he told the truth about like MK Ultra and, all of these things that people don't know about. He was educating me about, because, I used to be totally in the dark about a lot of things. But anyways, so I want to talk about the whole Tulsi Locals thing.
Okay.
I was like kind of speaking against it at first, because it's, it is a private company. You pay $7 a month to join and to be able to speak on Tulsi locals. But I read the terms and conditions and I read the community guidelines, and you know, they can censor people even more than Twitter does. But I understand why Tulsi wants to go, because Tulsi has been censored so much.
Right.
And like anyone who speaks against war gets censored. Anyone who tells the truth about some of the atrocities committed by our government gets censored.
Yeah.
So Jacob Hornberger, I literally went to his Twitter page every day, and I re-liked his pinned tweet every day. And it was this video of him just speaking truth.
Right.
And so, yeah, so Tulsi was censored. Jacob Hornberger was censored. There was another tweet that was from Justin Amash, like a long time ago, like before he joined the Libertarian Party, where he said something like, end these illegal wars, or something like that. Yeah. And I bookmarked it and I liked it over and over and over again. So I totally understand why Tulsi wants to have her own platform. However, I'm not going there. I'm staying on Twitter unless they kick me off, until they kick me off, because I want to stay and fight and tell people, hey, this is, you know, like you were saying, this is a platform. This is, I don't know what words you said exactly, but to me, it's like, it is analogous to a public park. Under that First Amendment analysis, it's like a public park.
Public utility, right.
Right. You said public utility, and yes, exactly. So, and that can be compared to a public park. Anyone should be allowed to go to this public park. So, so if we think about it, okay, what happens if some crazy whack job comes into the public park and starts, I don't know, he whips out his wee-wee and starts wagging it around, right? Something, so like that's obscenity. That's bad.
You mean like Bill Clinton shows up, in other words?
Right.
Okay.
Right. Something like that. So there's like bad speech that's happening at this public park.
Yeah.
What would happen?
Well, in that case, you would think that there would be some repercussions, that there would, you know, you would say, what, call the police, you know, to
call the police,
to police this Bill Clinton character and get him out of the park. And see the public forum, but that's what Jack Dorsey would probably argue with you and say, look, Stacie, you're a Bill Clinton character here, roaming my platform. I don't mean in the literal analogous thing that you were talking about. I mean in the sense that you're on this platform and you're throwing out all of this crazy conspiracy stuff. Because this is what everybody now who isn't, you've got progressives that are conspiracy theorists. You've got obviously the people on the right, the libertarians. We heard what John Brennan thinks of libertarians, right? On his little list the other day. I covered it and Reed covered it. And his video was a little entertaining at the end, what he thought of John Brennan. It's really scary. What scares me more in this country now are, it just seems that the people who really are peace-loving Americans, people who don't want to have to take up arms against anyone, but who may be willing to do so if they're put in that situation, those people, because they're willing to fight for their country and they love the country, or they love the concept of liberty. Just put America aside for a moment, because when you say America, people now like, oh, America is gross. It's just bad. It's a failed state. The people on this is Jimmy Dore's favorite line now. I don't think we're a failed state. I think there are parts of the country that are in receivership. I don't know if you've ever heard that terminology. When I was a kid, there's this town, I used to live up in Boston, and there was this town that was north of Boston, Chelsea, Massachusetts. You can go Google this and look it up. Chelsea was bankrupt. Their school system was a mess. Their infrastructure was falling apart. Their politicians were corrupt. Does that sound familiar? Now, what did the state do? Well, the state had to go in there, which is very odd for a state government to have to do, because Chelsea was in such bad shape. They had to take it into receivership, into the state, where the state took it over, received the town, wiped out all of the stuff that was happening. Like, in other words, all these politicians were basically told to get out of Dodge, and eventually new elections happened, and they took state funds and they started fixing the roads and the bridges and cleaning up the streets and doing what they had to do to get Chelsea back to a place where people could live, not in fear that the corruption was gone. But I see the country in a larger sense kind of going into receivership. And the problem is the federal government is also in receivership. But who are they in receivership to? Well, foreign governments, corporations. It's a real scary thing that's happened, where there are no more like safety valves. Like, we've gone through all of them. And to me, the new approach should be, all right, this failed state over here, rather than, the Jimmy Dore solution would be to inject it with more money, grow it bigger, make it more like it's got to be managed. It's got to be more central planning. And as kind of a newly christened libertarian, I say no, decentralize that. Again, privatize what you can privatize, because there's no evidence and I had this discussion with Charles a little bit back and forth, is that there's no evidence that the government can do anything correctly. All right. And I'm not saying they can maybe do a few things right. They're supposed to be able to keep the infrastructure, and they're supposed to protect us from enemies, both foreign and domestic.
Right.
And full circle now, I'm now considered a domestic enemy of the state because I believe in liberty and freedom, and I don't buy into the corporate narrative, which you see on television every day. That's why you look at media companies, whether it's television, whether it's social media, they seem to all be singing from the same hymnal. And I'm getting, it's driving me nuts that I can't get any different perspectives. I mean, the only place I can find them are private channels like yours, like you talked about the Convo Couch, Reed Coverdale, the naturalist capitalist. There are a whole bunch. So you left me, so we're even now. But what to me is kind of scary is that there doesn't seem to be any universal concern, because all of the people involved with the entertainment industry, they're kind of like, yeah, I guess we can just go along with this. We go along with it. We get along. We don't. Most people who love their country and love liberty, we're not like pot stirrers. We're not. Most people have jobs. They have children. They have things they've got to do. So it's kind of like we've got to get away from the things that we're supposed to be doing, like raising a family, making sure that we have enough money to support our families and so forth. And we got to jump into this arena. And it almost seems like there's a professional political class that has this all figured out, and that they tend to be one step, if not more than one step ahead of the working folks and the folks that are just, trying to kind of navigate this political landscape. And, we saw this a little bit I think the whole Capitol insurrection thing, it almost felt like a false flag event, which triggered all these other things like, oh no, why are there still 6,000 troops in DC? Remember, we were told that Trump wanted to militarize everything. Oh, he's going to send troops into Portland, and he didn't want to, but he did a little bit, and then he didn't. And then he was really hesitant to do that. And some people there were, please send these troops in. And he didn't, for the most part. He was one day away from Portland. They heard they were coming, and so they broke up the Chaz, you know. Mm-hmm. But in DC now, they built a giant wall around the White House. They built a wall. It's a fence with barbed wire, with razor wire on top of it.
Right. We
are militarizing the country in certain areas, and it's been in the inner cities before. Things get out of hand. We send these troops in, shock troops that are trigger happy. And I'm not impugning all law enforcement. That's not at all what I'm talking about. It seems as though this is going to be the new norm to keep the peasants under control. Because if we have a message that they don't agree with, like, hey, I'm not sure this election was run with integrity, and you're not even going to hear the case, you're not even going to open the books, you're not even going to listen to some guy who ran big tech companies, forget his name, Joven. He's got a really common or a familiar last name, but he did all kinds of forensic analysis, and he came up with some very shocking information. Nobody wanted him to talk. So this free speech problem, which starts with these companies, which are now literally, like I said at the beginning of this, they're literally in bed with the federal government. And if you can't call it out just on a common sense level and just look at the facts, and you're arguing, Stacie, about the constitutionality, just the legal aspects of this, there should be people in the streets or on social media who are communicating with their friends and going, yeah, just plant a seed. Say something like, yeah, Amazon doesn't pay any taxes. Don't you find that kind of weird? That'd be one thing I would say to people. And I'll let you cut in here. Number two, do you know that big pharma, they don't have any liability if you get this shot and something goes wrong? You have no recourse. Just 90% of the people who are like, hurry up, give me the jab, I need this. They have no idea that there's no liability if something goes wrong. Okay.
Right.
Over to you.
So now I have two things.
Right.
So the whole no liability thing goes all the way back to the BioShield legislation. And my old computer crashed. I used to have I will find it again.
Yeah.
The transcript of a Senate hearing from like 2003, where a guy named Robert Kadlec, he's still like one of the upper people in our government. He was talking to our Senate about how to ensure that the government would not be liable and big pharma would not be liable either. So
this goes back to 1986, by the way.
Oh, it does?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Here's something for the viewers and for you to check out. It's actually a documentary film. It's called 1986, The Act. 1986, The Act. And Ronald Reagan, of all people, who, I mean, I liked Reagan, thought he was a very good president. I lived through it. I like the 80s. I know a lot of people have their own perception of the 1980s. Wasn't perfect, but people had money, people had freedom, people had jobs. Pretty good, you know. But 1986, The Act was a documentary that kind of goes back, and it talks about how big pharma ended up just pressuring the crap. And by the way, Fauci is in on this whole thing because he dates back to that time period. And if you try to wrap your brain around it, it's going to be another video you and I are going to have to do.
Yes.
But I tell you what, this information, it's censored all over the place. It's just, if you start to talk, I mean, one of the frontline doctors Gold is her last name. I know you must know who she is. But
I don't know.
she got arrested in DC. They said that she was part of the insurrection for spreading false information about vaccines, which is madness. If anything, and she's a lawyer and she's a doctor. Gold. I can't remember her first name, but
yeah, I'll look that up too.
she's one of the frontline doctors. And, all of those speeches where they came out of the woodwork, again, free speech, large corporations, big pharma. I mean, imagine you're the government, right? And Donald Trump, and see, I was not big when Trump was up there saying, oh, we're going to get this for everybody. It's going to be great. It's going to be the greatest, best. He's throwing out his Trump superlatives. I'm sitting there going, vaccines get tested for a very long time before they go out to the public.
They're supposed to.
Yeah. And there's no long-term testing on this vaccine whatsoever. There was no animal testing. Somebody said to me on Twitter, they said, well, I think it's inhumane for animals to get tested. And I'm like, really? Okay, so we'll skip the animal trials. We'll go right to humans because you think that's not ethical. All right, I understand. All right, what people are saying, but you're going to put your grandmother at even higher risk because, she gets this. And I'm not going to throw out conspiracy theories here, but not everybody has had a really great reaction to the first jab, and then they have to get a second jab. And I know my wife, who works in healthcare and is a medical assistant, and she has seen one of her coworkers after she got the second, and the coworker couldn't go to work the next day. All right. So, and again, I don't know I'm not saying what the side effects are and what. I am not a doctor, but this all goes back to free flow of information from people who are, they say, well, we are experts over at the CDC. We are experts. And I go, well, my primary care doctor, my private practice physician, they're also experts. They work on the ground dealing with this day to day. So the CDC, they can put out statement here, statement there. They're basically playing the whole CYA game, and their statements have changed constantly. They're like constantly trying to adjust it because something happens and like recently, and I'll let you talk because I'm blabbing too much. They took off something on their website that said that vaccines don't cause autism. They took it off. They removed it, which is either an admission that they cannot say that with definitive proof, or they know something that they're not telling us, which the second one is monstrously scary because autism in this country didn't exist like 50 years ago. It didn't exist before the regimented vaccine era began. And I've been vaccinated my whole life, did not get a vaccine this year, got a flu vaccine last year, haven't gotten one. I mean, I got one in early 2020, right before the COVID thing hit. And I'm like, gee, I'm hoping maybe this will work against that, but obviously not. So I think the way corporations right now are all dominated by what they're either told to do or what their higher ups believe is for the common good, which sounds very socialist, very communist, very Marxist. I'm not going to lie, that scares the crap out of me. And they just do it because this is the narrative, So anyway, I've gone way too long.
No, you're good. I like listening. But I want to go back to what you said about how we should be planting the seed.
Yes.
And I absolutely agree. And I want to note that the same day that Ron Paul lost control of his Facebook account, I immediately went to his YouTube channel because I was like, what is it that we're not supposed to see? And he did a video on he didn't, it wasn't like my constitutional analysis verbatim, but he did say the words nexus. There is a nexus between these big tech companies and government. And he did also use the words symbiotic relationship. And so he's trying to plant that seed, the same way that I am trying to say, hey, listen, guys, all we need to do now is just find enough evidence to prove it, that there is a nexus, that there is a symbiotic relationship. Right. And the way I see it, it's becoming more and more and more obvious every single day.
Oh, yeah.
It's not just Tulsi Gabbard who's being censored anymore. It's half the country, right?
Yes, right.
Anyone who's conservative. And, they should be removed from Congress if they voted against impeachment of Trump. So they're, it's like, guess what, guys? It's not just Tulsi anymore. It's like, it's half of you that are listening to this.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that I wanted to touch on was Section 230. And I just want to read the part of Section 230 that is a huge, huge problem.
All right.
And that is, it's subsection C2A. And it says, subsection C is protection for Good Samaritan blocking and screening of offensive material. And then section 2, no provider or user of an interactive computer service shall be held liable on account of A, any action voluntarily taken in good faith to restrict access or availability of material that the provider or user considers to be obscene, lewd, lascivious, filthy, excessively violent, harassing, or otherwise objectionable, whether or not such material is constitutionally protected. That's the problem. That's the problem with Section 230. Now, I personally don't want to live in an echo chamber. Right. So I'm not joining Tulsi locals, not saying that it would be an echo chamber, but and I personally am not willing to pay for social media after, Jack Dorsey initially said, a long time ago when he was kind of maybe a normal person that, free speech lives here. Well, not with this standard. No, it doesn't.
No.
So, and then a lot of people say, including Jared Beck, who I respect so very much. He said something like, if you want to see social media go away, just repeal Section 230 and just watch it all be sued into oblivion. Well, maybe, but it doesn't, so they'll be sued, but are they going to be held liable? Like if they're government actors, right?
Yeah.
And I don't even know if I'm doing this analysis correctly. So this might be wrong, but this is just like my manner of thinking right now. If they're government actors, then they're going to be immune to certain stuff. Yep. Justin Amash says, end qualified immunity, but we didn't end qualified immunity. So like the example of like the crazy person in the public park, someone would pick up the phone and call the cops and the cops would come and remove said crazy person. Yep. And the public park would not be liable for the crazy guy.
Right.
Shit. There was one more thing. There was just one more thing I wanted to say. I have ADHD. So
it's okay. It's cool. I mean, you're making a lot of good points, trying to connect the dots.
Wait.
Go ahead.
I know. Before I forget. Okay. Yeah. So libertarians don't want any, we like everything to be private, right? We want private corporations. We don't want government involved. That's our whole thing is we want less government control, not more. We want decentralization. Yes, I want all of those things. And yes, that's a good goal. But libertarians and the rest of the world should stop and think about something. I learned at a CLE, like when I was preparing for a murder case, a few years ago. I don't remember when it was, but I went to this CLE on forensic investigations, and I learned that the FBI actually puts child pornography on the internet so that it can catch people who are watching it. So I'm telling you this because I think it's important to realize that the intelligence agencies and our federal government and they're already policing every single thing that happens on the internet.
Yeah.
So, you know, like if there's really bad stuff, you know, like unprotected speech, like obscenity, or you know, if there's really bad stuff online, they're gonna come in and they're gonna, well, we're supposed to be trusting them to get rid of it. We're not really supposed to, you know, they don't really want us to know that they're the ones who put it there. But in theory, right? In theory, the cops are supposed to come in and get rid of it. So for us to think for even 1 second that we are not being monitored, you know, go back and watch Snowden's Citizen 4 movie. Like, guess what? People were already being monitored.
Yeah.
It's all, there's already that symbiotic relationship between government and big tech. So even though we want to make everything private, we need to acknowledge the reality that it's not.
No, that's what you just said there. I was thinking while you're talking, this is just so scary to think about all of the monitoring. You know, I think Snowden even said at one point that if your phone doesn't have a battery in it, they can still figure out a way to listen to your conversation with a dead phone. With a dead phone, because it has some other kind of cell in there that they can activate from a remote location. All right. And if they want to listen to you, I don't know if they can take video, but they can listen. All right. And so we are at a point where, you know, like Glenn Greenwald wrote a book many years ago now, called Nowhere to Hide. I'd highly recommend it. And this was at least 10 years ago. And Glenn is a progressive, but obviously he is an honest progressive, and he sees, there are people, this is when you talk about a symbiotic relationship. I think what we need to do is have a symbiotic relationship, those who are fighting this with those who agree on these big ticket items, as I like to say. If you like the Fourth Amendment, you should be out there fighting to keep the Fourth Amendment, you know. Like Obama said, if you like your doctor, you can keep your doctor. You know, if you like the Fourth Amendment, you should be able to keep it. But we're the ones that need to speak up. And you've got all these alphabet soup agencies that I think ought to be abolished. They ought to FBI gone tomorrow. CIA. What are we doing? Who are we spying on? Us. Right. The other day, I did a video about, everybody says, well, you know, we really need to bring the troops home. Well, we did. We brought them home. Guess where they are? Washington, D.C. Guess where they are? The streets of major U.S. cities. The new endless war is right here. It's the scariest revelation I've had this year, to think to myself, okay, I wanted us to bring the troops home. We brought some of them home. I mean, we're still obviously all over the world, but now Raytheon, you know, Northrop Grumman, whoever, they're all really happy because, hey, there's a lot of civil unrest going on. And that's all. This is brilliantly staged by the political actors, the Nancy Pelosi's and the Chuck Schumers, and
all of it.
Mitch McConnell, oh, gee, we're going to start to that Donald Trump, he's really, yeah, Trump is really stirring it up down in Mar-a-Lago. He left. He's gone.
Mm-hmm.
Bring the troops home. Ron DeSantis, our governor here, said, come home. He called the National Guard home. And I think your state, I think in Texas, they did that too. They're like, nope, these aren't rent-a-cops. This is this is the military. What are you doing? Mm-hmm. So we've got to come together. Left, right, center. I don't care where you are on the political spectrum. Say you're not into all the privatization of everything, even though there's plenty of evidence that the government does it, it sucks. But if a private company does it and they're not in bed with the government, they probably do it better. All right. And guess what? In a free market, if you don't like that company, you can try another company most of the time. The government is the government. And if, the DMV ain't getting it done, guess what? There's no other DMV you can go to. There might be another branch down the road, but I almost can guarantee you they're going to suck just as bad as the one you just left. Because there's no accountability. There's no motive. There's no, I hate to say profit motive, but yeah, a paycheck does motivate me. Profits can motivate me. I want my channel, for instance, to be successful. That's a motivation. I know some people say, well, it's a little bit of it's a perk. It's an added bonus, but it's a motivator. And people are typically not motivated by poverty. They're not motivated when, it's mediocrity is not a motivator. Okay. If, I'm going to go to this restaurant, they have mediocre food, or I can go to the better one down the street, it has really good food. Mm-hmm. So again, you see this in your life. Libertarianism, you live it. I always tell people about libertarianism. I said, you're already a libertarian. You don't know it. Well, what do you mean? Well, freedom of association, right? You hang out with the people you like. You don't hang out with people you dislike. That's freedom of association. That's a libertarian concept. You want to keep more of your take-home pay, don't you? Most people do. No, I'd like to just give it away to the government. I'd like them to take more. No one ever said that. Okay. And you go down the list of things. And when it comes to free speech and this, as we opened up, and we're going to probably have to wrap this up soon because I knew we'd talk a lot. This idea that you said you did your little bro thing there. It's like, man, it's a private company. That is some dude who's got his, he's toked up and he's happy because they legalized pot and he's a libertarian because of that. And it's great. Leave me alone, man. I got my thing going on here. But they don't get into thinking that, because I like the speech that these guys are doing, I want to shut those supposed fascists down because everybody's a fascist now if you don't agree with them. Mm-hmm. And he's okay with that because, again, he's thoroughly intoxicated or whatever it is. And
I don't condone that. No. I mean, I don't, if you want to smoke pot and whatever, do it. But do it while you're listening to this conversation. How about that?
Look, 100% legalization. Let's be clear for all of the potheads out there. I am 100% for recreational legalization, ending the prohibition on marijuana across the board in the entire country. Done. Do it.
Too. Do it. The main reason why I really want that done is because I am fucking sick of reading police reports that say like, oh, plain smell. That's another thing. What
are some of them probably going home to do after they get? Look.
Right. They seize it and they never mind. I can't say that. I don't want you to get.
It didn't. The first example is it didn't work so well with alcohol. Now, did it? Didn't work so well. Look, you cannot. Right. There's certain levels of bad behavior. We can have the discussion about heroin and cocaine, but can we at least get to the point where we say, look, this plant grows naturally out of the ground. People typically don't run over people or smash their car. If anything, they're driving too slowly. Okay. Mm-hmm. Let's just the cliches. Driving too slow. I wrote you up. Now go get your Doritos and go home, and this is what we're talking about. All right. We've got bigger fish to fry than worried about the stoners out there who are enjoying their Grateful Dead music and leaving people alone. That's what libertarianism is. Now, on the same token, no pun intended, token. The my brain, it's the vodka.
I love
it. So on the other end of the spectrum is I have the freedom not to partake. All right. I don't use drugs.
Right.
I don't ingest drugs. I've never smoked anything in my life, including cigarettes. I try to live a healthy lifestyle, even though I need to lose like 50 pounds. But here's the thing. All right.
You don't need to lose 50 pounds.
Okay. Well, anyway, what's that? Everything is subjective. Okay. So we got to wrap this up because we're just going to go on forever. The point I'm trying to make is libertarianism protects everybody. If you're a religious person, you're protected. If you're an atheist, you're protected. Your right to speak out and say you're a religious person, you have the freedom to preach your truth to the people that are walking by you, so long as you're not like interfering in their forward progress or anything stupid. This is the whole idea of the non-aggression principle, and there's so many good things about libertarianism. The problem is we've had lousy salespeople over the last 50 years, and we need somebody who can sell it, somebody who's charismatic, somebody who can go out there and tell the truth, but also do it with a smile and do it with a little panache, not just like, And
I would like to introduce you to Adam Kokesh.
Yeah.
More people should be listening to Adam Kokesh.
Adam Kokesh, yeah. Yes. I know him. I used to follow him a couple years ago. I'm going to have to double back as the press secretary for Biden says, I will circle back and I will check out Adam. But any last words, Stacie, because we're already like an hour deep here.
Last words. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me on the show. I would love to share my rant about marijuana and the Fourth Amendment and how I would just love to rant about that. But another day.
Another video, another one topic video, because that's all we can only do one topic at a time.
Yeah.
Obviously.
And I really enjoy talking to you. Thank you so much for having me on the show. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
You are welcome. And what's your channel called? What's your channel called?
It's called The Dissent.
The Dissent. All right. Yes. DISSENT.
That's it.
Awesome. And it's on YouTube and it's you.
Yes. Yes.
All right, everybody, go subscribe. Do it now.
Yes. Do it now.
Thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you soon.